entering medieval Europe. The fierce armies rushed west, and from there caused wars to spread across the nations. The proud kingdom of Burgundy was also fighting for survival. Even the king had to go to war to protect the border. Unexpectedly, on the way to the battlefield, the king was assassinated by an arrow through the heart. Not long after, his body was brought back to the capital Gums. General Hagen, who was also a master of weapons, always felt guilty because he could not protect the king. Princess Kriemhild realized that Hagen was blaming himself, so she secretly came to comfort him that her father's death was not his fault. Hagen looked at the girl he loved and suppressed the pain in his heart and promised that he would protect the royal family for the rest of his life. Not long after, the first Prince Ganser ascended the throne. The kingdom of Burgundy was also surrounded by wolves from all sides. They needed a strong ally, and the fastest way for the two countries to form an alliance was through marriage. The princes argued endlessly about this. Finally, the king decided to marry Kriemhild to Agbo, who had just lost his wife in a difficult childbirth in the kingdom of Lombardy. As long as they could win over the Lombards, they could consolidate their power on the eastern border of Burgundy. Ganser planned to marry his sister there in the summer. Although Hagen was heartbroken, he could only follow the king's arrangement. Hagen secretly revealed this to Kriemhild, hoping that she would be mentally prepared. Kriemhild understood that the alliance with the East was her father's lifelong wish, so she would not object to this marriage. That night, thunder and lightning howled, and the wind howled. 11 foreign knights camped outside the city gate. They did not carry any flags or medals, but looked like wandering warriors. Although the group of people stationed outside the city did not make any movements, everyone felt that danger was approaching. Early the next morning, several strangers appeared under the city gate, led by a golden-haired knight. Kriemhild quietly hid and observed the group, and she discovered that the face of the hooded man in the group could change like magic. Ganser met the golden-haired knight and learned that it was Fried, the son of King Sigmund. The two countries had been allies for a long time. Fried was young and impulsive, so as soon as he arrived, he challenged Ganser to a battle. Everyone heard this and stood in front of Ganser, saying that Burgundy welcomed him but would not show mercy to his enemies. Moreover, the Burgundians never fought alone, but were a united family. If Fried wanted to challenge Ganser, he would have to defeat everyone first. Fried was not stupid enough to fight the whole group. If Ganser did not accept the challenge, then Fried would have to obediently be a guest. Ganser called for someone to prepare a room for Fried's group, but Kriemhild was worried because the eyes of the cloaked man were definitely not human. Kriemhild suddenly remembered the ancient legends about the ancient rulers, and the ancient rulers were referring to the gods in the Sithenhu mythology. In this mythological system, there was also a species that hid at night, the dwarves. It was said that they could enter people's dreams to do evil. In order to reassure Kriemhild, Hagen hid in the dark and watched Fried's group. They were drinking and having fun without any vigilance. Only the cloaked man hurriedly turned into a small alley. In the blink of an eye, he had entered a dark warehouse. Hagen chased after him and caught him, but under his cloak were only a few torn sacks piled up. Just then, Fried, who was drunk, staggered out of the room. Hagen warned Fried that this place was not for humans, so he quickly led his men away. As the sky neared dawn, Hagen was haunted by nightmares again. The cloaked man was indeed a dwarf, and the appearance of the alien race also drove the war horses in the city crazy. Kriemhild's beloved horse also struggled to break free from the reins and rushed straight out of the city. She hurriedly rode after him. Hagen was worried about her safety, so he also rode close behind. Only saw the white horse stop by the river to drink water. Kriemhild wanted to go over and comfort it, but it did not recognize its owner, and lowered its head and ran straight into the forest. It was rare for Kriemhild to show her weakness in front of Hagen, who had watched her grow up since she was little, because she really did not want to leave her homeland to marry far away. A few days later, Fried still did not leave Gums City. He even brazenly walked around the palace and showed no respect to King Ganser. He also claimed that he had a prophetic dream. In the dream, Queen Hild II of Iceland possessed the ability to cast magic from the other world. Everyone's expressions changed when they heard that, but immediately after that, Fried burst out laughing as if everything had just been a joke. These days, Kriemhild had always been in the women's area and had never appeared in front of the group. Fried was naturally a flirtatious person, and had always longed to see Kriemhild. That night, he barged straight into Kriemhild's room. She quickly pulled his shirt tight and asked him to leave because she didn't want to associate with rude people. Fortunately, Fried didn't take any further action and just turned around and left Kriemhild's place. Fried's jokes at the banquet table made Gonzer waver again. He also wanted to meet the Icelandic queen. Hagen said that he had promised his father that he would protect this family and that even without an alliance, Burgundy was still very strong. Gonzer was convinced by Hagen to also cancel the alliance marriage. The next morning, someone discovered a body dumped outside the castle. The victim came from a settlement further north and was murdered with a sharp iron weapon. Hagen received the news from the scouts and immediately went to the palace to see the king to report that the Anglo-Saxons and Danes had betrayed. They had advanced close to the area near the Jai River, and now Burgundy was isolated and had no one to help. King Ganzer ordered Hagen to meet Fried, in the hope that this brave warrior could help on the battlefield. Hagen went to the palace where the guests were staying, but he only saw the cloaked man standing there alone. He recognized that he belonged to the old gods. It left a mental scar on Hagen. Hagen also said that Fried had fought with the old gods. Fried had killed the giant dragon and bathed in dragon blood. Thanks to that, his body became invulnerable with unparalleled strength. Fried's sword was also forged from dragon bones. While he was bathing in dragon blood, a Bodhi leaf flew and stuck to his back, which was Fried's only fatal point. Before Hagen could return to the palace, Fried went to the king and asked to go to battle, promising that he would wield his sword to kill the dragon for Burgundy. Before the great battle began, Hagen went to Kriemhild to say goodbye. Kriemhild knew that Hagen was the one who convinced the king to cancel the arranged marriage. Kriemhild asked Hagen why he wanted her to stay. Actually, Kriemhild already had the answer in her heart, but she still hoped that Hagen would say it. Hagen had to bring Burgundy back to that peaceful period, which was the most important thing. In the end, Hagen still did not clearly state his feelings. The next day, the great Burgundian army set out. They marched along the Jai River Valley and moved forward at the fastest speed. With his vast experience, Hagen quickly outlined a battle plan. Hagen pointed out that although the Anglo-Saxons and Danes were brave, they lacked discipline, so we must maintain our formation. Fried did not care much about tactics because he fought based on his own strength. At midnight, Hagen saw Fried riding his horse into the forest alone. Early the next morning, Fried returned with the head of the Anglo-Saxon king in his hand. Now that the enemy had lost their general, their morale was broken. Fried drew his dragon-slaying sword and asked who was willing to follow him to destroy the enemy to the end. The soldiers cheered excitedly. They ignored Hagen's dissuasion and followed Fried straight into the enemy camp. Because he wanted to protect the royal family, Hagen had no choice but to follow closely and join the battle. As soon as Fried stepped onto the battlefield, he was like a fish in water. He could kill gods, but the other soldiers were still just mortal bodies. Fried had just saved Gonzer's youngest brother when he witnessed his trusted guard being stabbed by the enemy. Fried stood still, overcome by mental shock. A man took the opportunity to sneak attack and even blinded Hagen's left eye. Hagen fell to the ground, fumbled for his sword, and stabbed the enemy to death. In his daze, Hagen saw the pitying eyes of the cloaked man. A big man wanted to take the opportunity to deal with Hagen, but fortunately, Fried from afar saved him in time. In the end, the battle was won. Fried bravely entered the river and was also respected by the people. Everyone gathered to celebrate the victory, while Kriemhild stayed away from the noise to take care of the unconscious Hagen. The cheers outside the window grew louder and louder. Everyone was still chanting Fried's name. Kriemhild rushed into the excited crowd and warned Fried not to disturb the dead soldiers. Fried believes that death is an inevitable part of war, and he will not use silence to mourn the dead. However, Fried also knew that Kriemhild was upset, so he suggested that the cloaked man heal Hagen. When the man touched Hagen, he also awakened Hagen's forgotten memories. It turned out that Hagen was originally from the John Jay kingdom. The former king of Burgundy had adopted Hagen. He said that the dragon destroyed Hagen's homeland, but that was not true. War was what destroyed Hagen's homeland. Because the great old god had not only not harmed Hagen, but had even saved his life, he had the dragon's claw marks on his body. After the intense pain that was deeply engraved in his mind, Hagen finally woke up. The first thing Hagen did when he woke up was to visit the fallen soldiers. Although Fried's style was a bit extreme, he had truly brought hope and victory to Burgundy. Even if Fried were given a chance to start over, he would still rush into the forest that night and take the head of the Anglo-Saxon king with a sword strike, because that was Fried's nature, and it was not easy to change. He was like a hurricane that blew away the clouds of Burgundy and also swept away Kriemhild's heart. No one could stand still, and wait in the same place forever. Kriemhild had given Hagen a chance, but he refused to confess his feelings. At this time, Kriemhild followed Fried outside the city, and she saw the ruins of the ancient war. Kriemhild was always curious why the dwarves followed Fried. Fried explained that it was because he had killed their master, and that was also the last dragon in the world. These past days, Kriemhild and Fried were always together. Their relationship developed rapidly, but no one knew that death was riding the east wind. The Huns had united and were gradually approaching their territory. Aethel also led an army to defeat the Lombards. Burgundy needs a strong alliance to fight together. Gonzer still remembers the Icelandic queen, and he wants to use ancient power to win. His younger brother thought that he was fascinated by the dwarves, and that was why he kept thinking about the Huns. So when Fried was not around, he locked the dwarves in iron cages. Hagen knew about this and went to see the dwarves. Hagen told them that if they wanted to be free, they should tell him the story of the Icelandic queen. The dwarves explained that everything that was out of reach was attractive to Fried. So when he heard about the legend of the Iceland queen's invincibility, he went to Eisenstein to meet the queen. Unexpectedly, the two of them fell in love and spent a whole year together. In the end, Fried decided to leave, and that broke the queen's heart. The next day, Hagen went to find Kriemhild and advised her to stay away from the unreliable Fried. But Hagen knew that the two of them were planning to get married. Kriemhild knew that Hagen did not trust Fried, but as long as they got married, Fried would truly become a part of Burgundy and protect their homeland together. And for the future of Burgundy, Hagen would definitely not object to this marriage. So Kriemhild told Hagen to say a few good words in front of Gonzer. Hagen followed Kriemhild's words, and Gonzer agreed to the marriage. But Hagen also told Gonzer to put forward an additional condition. If Fried wanted to marry Kriemhild, he would first have to help Gonzer win the heart of the Icelandic queen. As long as Burgundy had this female warrior, they would definitely be able to repel the Hunno. Not long after, the fleet set out for Eisenstein, and the journey was extremely difficult. The difficulty was that just as they were about to arrive, they encountered a huge storm that night, and all the boats were destroyed. Almost everyone who accompanied them was swept away by the water. Fortunately, Gonzer had a good life and was fine. Fried had been here once before, so he knew the rules of the Iceland queen well. Fried told Hagen to put down his weapon and followed a silver-haired woman to meet the queen. The queen's castle was located under a volcano. As soon as they entered the castle gate, they were covered with sackcloth and beaten. When Hagen regained consciousness, he found that Gonzer and Fried had both disappeared. Only the white-haired woman was standing beside him. Hagen hurriedly explained that Gonzer had come here with no bad intentions and only wanted to propose to the Icelandic queen. If this person said so, he would have to fight, just like the people who came before him. It turned out that those who wanted to marry the queen had all turned into piles of bones. Gonzer appeared soon after. It was clear that Gonzer had been enchanted by the queen. In his hand, he was holding the precious sword that the opponent had given him. Gonzer declared that he would use this sword to fight for the queen, not expecting that the person she had her eyes on was Fried. Of course, Hagen did not want Gonzer to lose his life, so early the next morning, Hagen asked to retreat. Gonzer was determined not to change and would definitely marry the queen. Fried frankly said that even he could not defeat the queen, but the dwarf had a way to help them win. They only saw the three of them go to a nearby cave. The dwarf took blood from Hagen and Gonzer's arms and made a cut behind Fried's shoulder. Hagen recognized that place as a fatal weakness that had been covered by the Bodhi leaf. The dwarf mixed the blood of the three of them together and pushed Fried and Hagen into the water. Just as they were about to drown, Gonzer drank a mouthful of the fresh blood. That way, he could temporarily receive the power of the other two. Gonzer left the cave to challenge them. Senua's subordinates helped him put on his helmet and raised his hand to signal the queen to come out. When Senua's order was given, the queen also attacked first. This female warrior was truly formidable, but now Gonzer possessed the power of Fried and Hagen, so he was not easily defeated. Moreover, through Gonzer's face, the queen could see the eyes of the person she loved. In a moment of carelessness, she was stabbed by Gonzer. Fresh blood dyed the white snow red, signaling the end of this war. Fried and Hagen woke up from the lake, and the divine power also left Gonzer. The Icelandic queen accepted her honorable defeat and led her people on their journey. Before leaving, she touched the ground with both hands as a farewell to the land that gave birth to her. The group quickly reached Burgundy. Now the city was left with only ruins. It turned out that the Hunno had taken action one step before Gonzer. The Burgundians could not guard the border, so they were attacked almost every week. Hagen's subordinates fled everywhere. The men in the village all hid for fear of being conscripted into the army. Now the only way left was for the queen's people to go to war. So the two new couples also held their weddings on the same day. Hagen looked at Kriemhild happily and smiled. But then Hagen saw Fried looking at the queen longingly. It seemed that sooner or later the relationship between these four people would have problems. As soon as the wedding ended, they had to go to the battlefield. The queen also realized that Ganzer was useless and that the duel was just a deception. She drew her sword and walked straight to the training ground. In just a few moves, she defeated Fried and then kicked him away. The queen raised her head and screamed to the sky to vent her anger. But the enemy was approaching, so she had to accept her fate. On the last night before the battle, Hagen also realized that everyone was afraid of Ezio because they had been scared by the Humno army for a long time. But going to battle, they absolutely cannot be afraid before fighting. So Hagen told his soldiers that no matter how powerful Ezio was, they were still mortals. Our queen was the daughter of the gods, an ancient being like the elves, the dragons, and the three goddesses. The goddess of war would protect those who dared to risk their lives, and as long as they followed her, they would surely win. Even if they died on the battlefield, the queen would guide their souls into the temple of the gods. Hagen's words seemed to give them courage. In that great battle, not a single soldier retreated. The queen even cut off Ezio's head with a single slash of her sword. Fried was like a moth to a flame, and he was once again fascinated by the Iceland queen. The next morning, Ganzer received the news of victory, that they had pushed the Humno army out of the border. The war was officially over. Fried and the queen were also cuddling as if there were no one around. Hagen could turn a blind eye to them and let them be happy, but he still had to remind Fried that you left your father and I lost my homeland. Now Burgundy is their shared home. When he returns, Fried must be loyal to Kriemhild and not make her sad. Fried hugged Hagen and promised that he would treat the Princess of Burgundy well and return to the peaceful days. Fried did not like the calm life like the surface of the water, and the subordinates who had followed him at first also left one by one. Fried repeatedly advised Kriemhild to leave this place with him and go far away to continue their journey to explore the world. However, Kriemhild was the Princess of Burgundy, so she would never leave her people. Fried was already feeling frustrated and realized that Ganzer's attitude towards him had changed. On the one hand, Fried had great achievements that surpassed his master, so he was very loved by the people of Burgundy. On the other hand, Ganzer also clearly felt the hidden emotions between the queen and Fried. There are three things that people cannot hide: cough, poverty, and love. Ganzer asked Hagen when they went to battle what happened to Fried and the queen. Hagen replied that they had won, and that was the most important thing. Ganzer had to suppress his anger, but during the victory celebration, Fried was rude to Ganzer's younger brother, which made him furious. He shouted at Fried, "Even though you married my sister, it doesn't mean you're a member of this family. You're just my sister's husband and my subordinate." The relationship between the two of them got worse and worse. Ganzer was also tormented by jealousy and anger. Hagen wanted to advise Ganzer to worry less because Fried was his brother-in-law and the prince's husband after all. Ganzer asked Hagen, "Who are you then? My father devoted all his heart to training you to be loyal. But who are you loyal to now?" The next morning, Ganzer summoned Hagen again and said that the queen had left the castle on horseback last night. Ganzer had secretly followed her and found her having a private date with Fried. Hagen finally got angry when he heard this and asked where Fried was. Ganzer replied, "I don't know. He comes when he wants and goes when he wants." Even Kriemhild didn't know where her husband was, and her tears meant nothing to Fried. The people of Burgundy all worshipped and admired Fried, even considering him a spiritual symbol. But Fried didn't care about those people. He was a drifting cloud, a wanderer, and there was no way he would change himself for Burgundy. Hagen understood Ganzer's meaning that sooner or later, Fried would disrupt the order of the family. To prevent that day from ever happening, Hagen had to deal with Fried. That day, Hagen chose a suitable day to meet Fried to go deer hunting in the forest. The two quickly discovered a pure white male deer. They shot it in the heart with a single arrow. Kriemhild suddenly woke up in the palace. She checked the stables and found that two were missing, and she had a bad feeling. On the other side, Hagen threw the dragon-slaying sword to Fried. Hagen decided to fight fairly. Fried silently attacked first. The sword could not penetrate Fried's skin, so Hagen could not gain any advantage. However, the years of hard training were not in vain, and they had trained Hagen's extraordinary will and skills. Hagen only saw Fried cornered in the stream and held him down. Unexpectedly, Fried reached the sword in the stream and stabbed Hagen in the thigh. The two crawled to the shore to retrieve their weapons and continued fighting. Hagen was injured, so he was at a disadvantage, and the cold blade was already at his throat. Hagen resignedly closed his eyes and waited for death. But Ganzer suddenly appeared and stabbed Fried in the back. Previously, because he helped Ganser marry the queen, Fried had exposed his weakness. Now, because of the queen, he was killed by Ganser. It could be said that fate was cruel and cruel. Hagen forced tried to get up and told Ganser to leave this place quickly because if he didn't, he would definitely be condemned by everyone. Ganser heard that and staggered away. Hagen saw a dwarf standing not far away. When Hagen approached, the shadow turned into a dry tree trunk. It was as if everything just happened, was just an illusion. Not long after, Hagen brought Fried's body back to the castle and announced that he had defeated Fried in a duel. At that time, Kriemhild was pregnant and in extreme pain. The queen also screamed in pain. Hagen became a thorn in everyone's eyes, but Kriemhild did not kill him but cursed him to live a long life. So long that Hagen witnessed Fried's son grow up and pay with something more precious than life. The movie ends here. Thank you for watching, goodbye, and see you again in the next videos.